Okay, let's try that again. Okay, I would like to welcome everyone to church this morning. I know we have a lot of visitors, and thank you for coming out. I am not the usual minister. Our minister is Mark Marshall, and he's on vacation. I am Marjorie DeBoer, and I'm just here to lead the service. Okay, try. Okay? Okay, yeah. Okay, I think it was maybe just the angling of it. Okay. Well, it's my first time doing this, so you can see that this is where the inexperience is showing. Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to church this morning, and Mark is on the study break. So now we're going to sing the second verse of this "I Am the Light of the World." So now I would like to do the land acknowledgement. I want to express gratitude to all those who built this church, to the Anishinaabe and the Adirondack and the Mississauga of the First Nations. Also want to express gratitude for Cooking Connections that took place on January the 17th. And a big round of gratitude for everyone who helped with the brunch last Sunday, for all those who donated money and food and time for the setup and the cleanup and the cooking, for those who participated in any way. It was a very meaningful conversation at the round table afterwards, and we have committed to meet again in February to start putting together an actionable plan for food security in Temsford. Let us know if you would like to be included. I would also like to express my own gratitude to some people who've helped me put this presentation together, to Sherry, to Wendy Brown, and to my son Tom. Would like now to call us all into the presence of Christ by lighting the Christ candle. Let us let go of the cares that we bring with us, the cares of the day. We focus on our breath and feel the presence of God in this place and in your heart. So I think we're now moving to our hymn, which is "I Feel the Winds of God." So now we have our connections questions. So maybe you can find someone you can talk to, maybe your neighbor, or you're welcome to leave your seats, of course. When was a time that you had to ask a neighbor for help? It could be something simple. It could be something more difficult. Well, it looks as though everyone has had that experience of having to ask a neighbor for help. And I'm glad that you have, because I think that can be a difficult thing for us to do, is to ask for help when we need help. And that's something I think we're going to talk about a little bit today. I'm going to share with you a message that I heard in just a little bit of a message that I heard at a church in Africa. And it was about asking for help. And it's something that I think sometimes we're too embarrassed, or we find it's difficult. And it's something in my own life as well, that as my husband was dying, he said to me, you know, that's one of your problems. You don't ask for help. Like, you're too independent, and you need to ask people for help. And he was right. And when I asked people for help, they were very willing to help. And it's a matter of pride sometimes with us that we don't want to ask for help. And so I'm glad that all of you have asked for help. And sometimes it's simple, you know, just asking if you can borrow that rake or something that you need for finishing up that baking that you're doing. Sometimes it's a little more difficult. The washing machine just broke in the middle of spinning, and you have to take all those wet clothes next door and get them spun. But it's good that we have neighbors that we can ask for help, and I'm glad that you've had that experience. Now we are going to move into our children's time, and I'm going to invite the children to come forward, and I have a bit of a story for you from my time in Africa. Hope this works. I think we're just going to sit down, okay? So hi guys, I'm Marjorie, and I'm not Mark, as usual, as you can see. Now, I went to Africa, and I'm going to tell you a few things about Africa. And Wendy is going to show us some pictures in a minute. She's going to take her a minute. Now, you guys know about any animals in Africa? Can you think of any animals? Yes?
It's when an animal...
No, an animal that lives in Africa.
A giraffe.
Giraffe, very good, yeah. And how about you? What do you think? Oh, you don't know. Okay. Well, what are we seeing in the picture? An elephant. And that's a really big elephant that I saw. I took that picture, and we were driving along, and I saw the elephant, and it was walking the other way. So I took lots of pictures of the elephant's bum. But then the elephant turned around, and it started walking towards us, and that got a bit scarier. This is a picture of a mother elephant, and she is eating some leaves, because elephants eat leaves. And you can see off in the corner, you see a little tail, right? And that I could see, oh, it's a baby elephant. But it was its bum. But then it turned around. And look at that. There's the mother and the baby. Now, one thing we can see about the elephant is that it has very big ears. And what do you think the elephants do with those ears? What do you think?
They do with those ears, and then they help them hear.
Yes, they do a lot of listening. But also, what's kind of curious is that they wave those ears in the air, and it helps them cool off. But elephants are very, very good listeners. And here we see elephants, and there they are in a group. Elephants are very social, and they stay together in a group. There's a mother with her baby, but this is actually part of a much bigger picture. There's a big herd of them, and they are all staying together. And this last picture, would you believe that's a baby elephant? And its mother, something happened to its mother, so it's at what's called an elephant sanctuary that I went to see, and like elephants need their mother's milk, and that baby wasn't able to get its mother's milk, so it's having what's called formula, and they have 2 bottles at a time. And here are the baby elephants, and they are playing in the mud at the sanctuary, because they're just the toddlers, or like babies, right? Like little kids, they like to play in the mud. Maybe you liked to play in the mud when you were little too. And there's a picture of me, and I am feeding a giraffe, and that's at a giraffe sanctuary. That was actually fun. And you don't realize how long their tongues are. They're about like so long, and they're black. And this is something you can do at the elephant, or at the giraffe sanctuary. Yeah, so that was really cool. So I think, is there going to be a children's time where they can go play downstairs, or? Oh, okay. Well, all right. So you're having to you're stuck listening to me the whole time. Okay. Well, so now we're gonna. Should we have a prayer? Oh. Okay. So we're gonna have a prayer, and you repeat after me. Okay. Lord, we thank you for elephants. And for people who care for elephants who are orphaned. Help us to learn from elephants to listen. Help us to learn from elephants to care for each other. Okay, so now, amen. So now I think you go sit with Mom and Dad again, or Grandma and Grandpa. It's a song that we sing together now. So now I'm going to read a passage from 2 Kings. It's called the Widow's Oil. The wife of a man from the company of the prophets cried out to Elisha, Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that he revered the Lord. But now his creditor is coming to take my 2 boys as his slaves." Elisha replied to her, "How can I help you? Tell me, what do you have in your house?" "Your servant has nothing there at all," she said, "except a little oil." And Elisha said, "Go around and ask all your neighbors for empty jars. Don't ask for just a few. Then go inside and shut the door behind you and your sons. Pour oil into all the jars, and as each is filled, put it to one side." She left him and afterwards shut the door behind her and her sons. They brought the jars to her, and she kept pouring. When all the jars were full, she said to her son, "Bring me another one." But she replied, "There is not a jar left." Then the oil stopped flowing. She went and told the man of God, and he said, "Go, sell the oil and pay your debts. You and your sons can live on what is left." So we'll come back to that. So my plan is I'm going to talk to you about my time in Africa. I'm going to start out by talking about Veterinarians Without Borders. And the reason I want to do that is partly because they want me to, do my public engagement, but also because this might be something that some of you are interested in doing, or maybe you have a child or a grandchild or a neighbor, and it's a good opportunity to learn about that. Then I'm going to talk about the work I did. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the church that I attended and some of my experiences with Christianity in churches, just, as an observer. I didn't work in any of the churches. It was just something that I saw. And then if we have time, I'm going to have some time for questions. So first, a little bit about myself. This is a bit small, but I grew up on a small farm in Huron County. My dad milked 10 cows. We shipped milk in milk cans. And that wasn't his main job. He worked mainly as a machinist at Champion Roads in Goderich. I went to University of Guelph, and I got a Bachelor of Science in Food Science there. And then I worked for 38 years in the dairy industry, in quality control, in food safety, in product development. And I was always interested in doing something with international development, but I didn't really think it fit with my skills. As a student at Guelph, of course, many of my fellow students were in crop science and animal science, and some of them had good experiences going abroad with Mennonite Central Committee, World Vision, and so it was something I was interested in doing. And then when Don came to talk to us, it triggered something, and could we have the next slide, Wendy? And Don came and he talked to us about Veterinarians Without Borders and about his experience. And Don is not a veterinarian. He is a soil nutrient specialist, I think he told me. So if we could have the next slide, I'll tell you a few things about Veterinarians Without Borders is an organization that was founded in 2005 at the University of Guelph. I've taken this from their website, and some of these are a little small, so if you want to learn more, just go to the Veterinarians Without Borders website, and they will tell you more facts about their organization. Have the next slide. They are a registered charity, and they're receiving funding from Global Affairs Canada. The project that I participated in has a Global Affairs Canada funding until the end of 2028. They are a very good organization in that they give you post-departure training, and they give you regular check-ins when you're on your assignments. They cover you for medical insurance and all the coverage you need for immunizations. They arrange and pay for all the travel. They assist you with your documentation. They help you find accommodation. And they also give a very generous living allowance that covers all your food and accommodation costs. So, a really good organization. Their motto is about One Health. So they believe that by having a healthy environment, healthy animals, and healthy people, all these things come together. And it says changing one thing changes everything. And so currently they have 9 countries with active projects. They have, the first ones are in Africa, and then we have Ukraine, And then we have some in South Asia, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, and they're also involved in northern Canada. When I was doing my training, there was a fellow also, I believe a soil specialist, who was going to Laos to work with rice farming. But it's a program that's not just for veterinarians. The next slide. This is just a clip I took from their website, but it shows you the types of jobs that they have open. If people are interested, you just simply apply like a job. You have an interview and a second interview, and it's very much like applying for a job, but you are considered a volunteer. So my project that I applied for was to be a dairy process advisor. So basically my task was to advise this dairy, which we'll go into the details about the dairy in a few minutes, on how to improve their processes, how to reduce waste, their documentation, which was quite lacking, and food safety. So now a little bit about where Kenya is. It's in East Africa. Next slide. This shows their neighbors. And Kenya is quite a peaceful, democratic country, but they're surrounded by a lot of countries that we've seen in the news, even just yesterday, with Rwanda and the Congo. They've had quite a stable government. This is another picture of Kenya showing Nairobi. I was stationed about 2 hours north of Nairobi, just about 150 kilometers. So here's some quick facts about Kenya. 54 million people, so it's the 7th largest in Africa. They're a former British colony. They gained independence in 1963. They're now a republic. Swahili and English are the official languages. Where I was, they spoke Kikuyu and English. They all speak English very well. They learn English from grade 1 in school, maybe even earlier. Agriculture is their largest economic sector. They're the world's leading exporter of cut flowers. So all those flowers coming into Amsterdam and Schiphol, a lot of them come from Kenya. You can see the big glass houses they call them glass houses, we call them greenhouses, just outside of Nairobi, where they grow all these flowers. Coffee is their most valuable export, and tea is also an important export crop. Central Kenya, where I was, it's generally a little cooler than the rest of Kenya because it's of the high altitude of 2,000 to 3,000 meters above sea level. It's very mountainous, and when I was there, which is their spring, the temperatures were just gorgeous, like between 13 at night to maybe 26 during the day. It wasn't humid at all, a beautiful breeze. They have fairly reliable rainfall there. The soils are volcanic. It's very fertile. And much of the Kenyan dairy industry is in this province. And it's also a key producer of coffee, maize, and sugar. So dairying is very important to Kenya. It contributes about 15% of the agricultural GDP. The milk check is a very important part of the economy because when you're growing coffee or macadamia nuts or some of these other things, you're never quite sure what the price is going to be when it's time to sell. Whereas milk, they know what their price is. They may not be producing a lot of milk, but it's that reliable check that's coming into the household every month from which they could budget and pay the school fees. And so it's an important part of their monthly budgets. And dairying is also a big part of Kenyan culture. Like even prior to this work that's been done with all these Holstein Friesian cows, they had cows. I read this book out of Africa. It was like taking place in the First World War. They have cows then, and also the Maasai people have herded cows for hundreds of years. I cannot read my own slide there. Oh yes, milk is an important part of the diet for most Kenyans, and Kenya has 85% of all the dairy cattle in East Africa. And another thing, it's an important source of employment in rural areas because the employment situation is not the greatest there. There's a lot of young people, and what do they do when they leave school? To go to the big cities like Nairobi. Like I heard someone, one of the fellows there said, "Oh, we call it the concrete garden," because it can be very, very difficult for them to find work there. The second largest slum in Africa is in Nairobi. So I think people worry about their children as they go there, whereas agriculture and dairying provides steady employment for them. And of course, the manure is a very important thing. It is a good source of fertilizer as well as biogas. So this is the dairy, and there are a few more pictures I'll show you later, but I worked for this dairy, Wakalima, and it's in a town, a fairly large town called Mukureni. It's a farmers co-op with 15,000 members and 9,000 milk producers, which is a lot of them, which, as you can imagine, they're not producing too much each. The members have access to veterinarian services, artificial insemination services. I had that as AI before, but when someone pointed out that wasn't maybe a good idea, because AI means something different now. And then, I don't think they have those kind of services. They have financial services, including microcredit, and they also have a whole animal feeds division, and so they can, and the farmers told me that the feeds that they bought were better quality. I also was able to tour those feed mills and talk to the people there about the testing they were doing on the incoming materials. So the farmers are getting a good quality feed from them. So almost all of the farmers are small farmers. And here we see a little girl, and she has come with her mom to bring milk to the collection station. So these little cans are what they bring their milk. So they milk 3 times a day, and they go to these collection stations 3 times a day. They're like, some of these cans that they're bringing in, they have like less than a kilo of milk in each can. And now the farmers who are really big farmers, like the farm that I stayed on, they're maybe filling 2 or 3 milk cans per milking. The truck will come and pick it up. They were also along a paved road, which may have helped their situation as well. But some of these cows are only giving like 1 or 2 kilos of milk per milking, and they only have 1 or 2 cows. So here's another milk collection station. You can see the fellow in the colored top. What he's standing on is the road. You can imagine what that turns into when it gets rainy. And these little huts, or whatever you call them, they're also used. They wait for the bus there. But this is the collection station. Here's another collection station. People are coming, bringing their milk, and it's being weighed. And as it's being weighed, they are given a little receipt for the amount of milk that they brought in. But before the milk is dumped into the common cans, they do quality testing, and that's this woman the woman in the blue coat. Well, in the foreground, there's a woman in a white coat. They're doing testing. So she's looking at it. She's smelling it. She's doing density, and that would be a test as to whether there is water in the milk. And what we see in the foreground, she's doing the California mastitis test. And the mastitis is a fairly big issue for them there. So the next slide. So then once their little milk container has been cleared, then it will be dumped into a milk can at the back of the truck, and the driver will issue a little receipt. So this is milk receiving at the dairy. All these milk cans come in. Now the dairy owns these cans. This is different how when my parents were doing it. So they own the cans, they wash the cans, these big cans. So they're receiving it, and then I think we go to the next slide. I think it shows, yeah, then they are dumping this milk, and they're dumping it. First thing, it's screened through a muslin cloth, and then there's 2 other filters that it will go through before it goes into their, and it's cooled. They have a plate heat exchanger, and then it's cooled, and then it goes into a bulk tank, which is, a lot of these bulk tanks are smaller than the tanks that we would see on our farms in Canada. And sometimes, so they have some remote cooling stations. I lived in Ishamara, which is 4 kilometers away from Mukureni, and they had a cooling station there. And so the farmers would bring the milk to those cooling stations, and then it's loaded into a truck like this, or sometimes they're buying milk from other dairies. I couldn't quite figure all that out. You can see on top of the truck, my kid said, "Is that you, Mom?" No, that is not me. Where is the safety harness? But that fellow is a QA technician, and he is taking a sample of the milk before it's offloaded. And sometimes the milk comes in on these motorcycles rather than pickup trucks. Like the one we saw earlier, that was like a big truck. You also have pickup trucks, and you have these motorcycles that run around and pick up the milk. This is myself. I'm with Gerard, and he was one of the founding members of the co-op, and he was happy to meet with me and tell me about his time in Canada. He came to Canada at the time that Jean Chrétien was our prime minister, and he was, I guess, with him in PEI when the pie in the face incident took place. And so he was happy to tell me about that. So I'm standing in front of what is called the Farmers Lab, and that was where my office was in the Farmers Lab. So, and then there's was a little plaque there, and so I zoomed in on that to show you that lab was equipped by Canadians, so the CIDA, that's the Canadian International Development Agency, and Farmers Helping Farmers of PEI. Now, the Farmers Helping Farmers of PEI also purchased a bulk tank for their cold milk. Here's another picture of the dairy from a different angle, and you can see that they have the solar panels on the roof. The Kenyan Power Board is a bit intermittent in their power, so in order to run a dairy, you need to have constant power. So they also have backup diesel generators, which I would hear kick in often. Yet another picture of the dairy. And so these are the products that they make at the dairy. So they do fresh milk in these little pouches. So like we all know about milk in bags, but these are really little. Like they're 200 mils or 500 mils. And because refrigeration is so intermittent there, they have a 3-day shelf life. But in fact, if you put that milk in a fridge, it keeps, 10 days to 2 weeks, no issue. So they put those little bags into these plastic milk crates that you can see. So depending on the size, so they'll put 50 of the 200 mils in there. So that's to give them 10 liters. And then those little crates are then reused, much as we know of how things are done here with milk crates, and they're washed at the dairy. Now, I asked people how they, like what do you do with it? How do you handle a little 200 mil bag? And they rip it off with their teeth, and then they drink it. And I have seen some pictures of that as well. But and this is sold in the markets or wherever and the reason when they started their dairy, they told me this was the only thing they made was fresh milk. But they when you have a milk that only has a 3-day shelf life, it kind of limits how far afield you can sell it. So they also sell milk in the jugs that we saw, and also they sell it in milk cans, like the fresh milk. The fresh milk in milk cans, that would go to restaurants and places like that, and to schools because there's a lot of boarding schools there. So they realized that in order to expand their market, they would need to go into what they call long life fluid milk. Sometimes we call it UHT. Not very common in Canada anymore. Like maybe 30 years ago, it was something that we had in the Tetra Bricks, but it's just not common here anymore. But it was very common, and I actually did quite a bit of work with UHT milk and creams and ice cream milks and stuff when I worked for Alt. So it was very interesting to me to go back and to see how important this is to them. And again, it's in bags, and 500 mils, 200 mils. And this has a long shelf life, 120 to 180 days, and there is no refrigeration required. This is the product that I drank when I was there. Everything is full fat. They don't get it. Like, why do you want low fat? That's just, what's the point? So everything is full fat, and I thought the product was really good. It tastes really creamy, and it's kind of handy because, you know, refrigeration is intermittent. I had a refrigerator where I lived, but I didn't always have power to be running this refrigerator. So to know that your milk is fine, even if it's, you know, just sitting on the counter is good. And this is packed. Okay, so we have a seasonal variation in the milk supply. So this is another reason why it's important to have this long life milk. They get most of their milk in the peak season for them is winter, which is our summer, and the low season is their summer because it becomes so dry and also maybe a bit too hot for the milk production. So they're receiving about 60,000 kilos a day. A kilo of milk and a liter of milk is almost the same. So you can just kind of do that in your mind. That's about the same. But they have plans to go to 100,000 kilos per day. They're only doing 6,000 liters of fresh milk a day, and they have tons of unused capacity for this long life milk. Like, there are times they were only processing every other day. So they would pasteurize the milk, they would store it until they would have enough to do a nice long run of this, of the long life milk. And this is a growing market for them, and they could sell more if they could get more milk. So here's a picture of them loading the milk onto the trucks. I believe that my next one is a little video, and you'll see this guy loading these boxes onto the truck, and you're thinking, what the heck, right? And that's what I thought. And so what they do is they make these boxes of milk and they put it on the pallet, and then they unload the pallet with these guys loading it onto the truck, and then they take the truck up the road to Ishimara, which is 4 kilometers away, and then they unload the truck again. And guess what? They have damage to these boxes. And there's one man, and it's his full-time job, to repackage the milk that is in the boxes that are damaged. So Marjorie from Canada thought, well, why don't you shrink wrap the pallets and then, oh no, don't go there yet, Wendy. Oh, now you ruined my surprise. Oh, sorry. So anyway, I said, why don't you shrink wrap the pallets and then you could just, load them on the truck. They said, well, then we'd need a lift truck. So I thought, okay, well, but how expensive is that? And of course it's expensive. But then one day I walk into the into the dairy, and then we see what Wendy's already shown us. There's this lift truck. And I said, but look, you have this propane-powered lift truck. And they said, well, that's to unload our loads, our film, like the rolls of film for the UHT, because it's really heavy. I'm going, yeah, but you could use that to load trucks, too. But Africa they have a different way of thinking sometimes, and Dawn is nodding. So the long and the short of it that I could figure out was that they have this thing, lift people up. Like, they want to lift people up. And so I was asked to employ someone to do my laundry because we want to lift her up. But then they use the same thing with this. They want to lift up those guys who are doing all that loading and unloading. So we have these young guys in the area, and they've just finished their high school, essentially, and they haven't gone on to college, and what are they going to do? And so they employ them at the dairy to do this type of manual work. So that's how it is. Well, and you know, shrink wrapping you can do manually. I mean, it's not, but anyway, whatever. A project for another day. So the other thing they make a lot of is these yogurt products. And they're doing about 15,000 kilos a day, and they have 4 different flavors. They have it in different sizes. It's like in jugs and in little 100 ml cups, 500 ml cups, and they would like to go to 20,000 liters or kilos a day. And again, it's only full fat. It's a pretty nice product. It's kind of thin compared to what we're used to, and they often drink it. You can see that foil lid. They'll put a straw through that, and they will drink it. And then they also make this thing called Lala, which is a fermented milk beverage, and it's part of their culture. It's a little bit like buttermilk, but it's, for those of you who are into micro, this is a mesophilic, so it ferments at room temperature, whereas yogurt is fermented at a higher temperature, like at about 40 degrees C. This is all done at room temperature. So they will fill these bags after they've been inoculated with the culture. They just leave it on the back dock for about 16 hours, and then it ferments. Now, Don, you told me you didn't have the courage to, you know what, yeah. Now, on the farms, I'm with you. I wouldn't go there, but their product, I drank it. It's quite refreshing. It's nice. They also use it a lot in baking, like in the type of things like how we might use buttermilk. Here we see yogurt production. They're dumping powders, so there'll be sugar and powdered milk, some stabilizers and such. And there's also a picture of people packing. So again, fairly manual compared to what we're used to, but good hygiene, wearing the masks and the hats and the gloves, and that was quite well done. This is interesting too, because in order to, in a dairy, you need steam, you need hot water. In your house, though, Don, you don't get hot water, but you know that. So how they generate the steam to boil this water is they burn eucalyptus trees, or timber as they call it, and this timber tends to grow on plantations. So we see the stacks of this wood, and then it's fed into a furnace, and this is how they are generating steam in the dairy. They have the option of using diesel, but they pay world price for diesel. This is much, much cheaper. I did ask about the polluting effect of this, but again. So here I am with the QA afternoon shift people. You can see that most of them are women. Like everyone in the dairy, they work a long week. They work 6 days a week, and they rotate which day they have off. I found these people to be extremely well educated. They all have some sort of technical dairy education from a polytechnical institute not too far away, or they have university degrees in food science. Quite clever people, and I thought they were, very capable of what they were doing. And here I am with the HACCP team. So that was one of the things I did while I was there, was around documenting. They were wanting to get ISO certification because they said they wanted to export, which again was a bit of a surprise to me when they struggled to supply their local market. But HACCP is a thing that looks at all your hazards and documents your process. So it was all a good exercise for them and for me to look at things. So some of the projects that I did was I documented all the recipes. The first day that I was with the lady from yogurt, we went down and we were doing the weighing, and I said, "Oh, where's your recipe?" And she said, "Oh, it's in my head." And which is great. But so we documented that. Another thing I noticed is that all the information on the package, when they make, say, vanilla yogurt, they're making one big vat of it, and then it goes into all the different sizes, as you would think. But every single package has different information. So I kind of challenged them on that, and So I've given them all the information now to what I think should be on the package. We shall see whether or not there's anything that happens on that. In Canada, this would be a big deal. Like your regulatory people would get on that. They seem to think it wasn't such a big deal with the Kenyan Dairy Board. I don't know. I'm not the Kenyan Dairy Board. And then HACCP studies, we completed, that was for the fluid milk and their value-added products, which is everything else. The other project that I worked on was on standardizing the incoming milk. And we did experiments, and we completed that. So I have a couple more slides that kind of explain what that is. So when the milk comes in, it's the same as in Canada, but the milk has varying fat. It also varies throughout the day. But the milk that came in was, between 3.8 maybe and 4.1% butter fat. And what they're selling, they're declaring 3.25 or, 3.3 on their packaging. So, but what was being packed was anything, was usually higher. So I said, you're really giving that cream away. Now, they did have a separator, and sometimes they were separating some cream that they were then selling to someone else making butter, or maybe to a restaurant who was using it for whipped cream or something. But I said to them, if you standardize that milk, if you take that cream off, and then they have skim milk powder in the yogurt, just, mix up your skim milk powder and water to make skim milk, and then add this to the cream, you're essentially like making recombined milk that they could then use, and but using that in yogurt. So we did experiments, and this all worked out very well, of course. And so this essentially is going to give them another 1,800 to 5,600 extra kilos of milk every day that they can use by essentially stretching what they have. But at this time, the limiting factor is the tank space for reconstituting the skim milk powder. So they were using their yogurt tanks, because they didn't really start making yogurt till the afternoon shift. So in the morning, they could make up the skim milk from the powder and ship that back to the receiving area, and then mix that with the cream to give them the milk that they could use for yogurt. Okay, so now we get into churches in Kenya. So this is a slide that kind of shows you the various religions, and my son and I wonder, why are the Quakers pulled out separately? We don't know. But they are a country that is mainly Protestant and Catholic, and there's over 10% Muslim population, which is higher than what we would see in Canada. And Christianity, is very much a part of their life. When you're almost everywhere, you would see that there would be stickers on the car that would have a Bible text, Philippians 4, verse 4, and people just know what that is, right? The taxi driver says John 3, verse 16. I think we would know that, but they don't have it all written out. They just have these verses on there. They also it's very much a part of their everyday language, good morning. Isn't this a beautiful day that the Lord has given us? They just say these things throughout. I noticed, at the dairy, and also where I live, people attend different churches. It doesn't really matter, they're all the same in how they greet each other. One day, at the dairy, it's Monday, and I couldn't find any of the managers, and they said, "Well, it's Monday." I'm like, "Oh, it's Monday." But it's well, I guess what was implied is that you start every week with prayer. There's a prayer meeting of all the managers before they start their week. Meetings at the factory start and with prayer by times, especially if there was any food involved. We would have a blessing on the samosas that we were going to have. And then they also seem to have a lot of concern for the vulnerable. And so this idea of we need to lift people up. The farm that I was at, I came home one day, and there's Annie, the landlady, and she's got these big feed sacks, and she's trying to put these big things of bananas and cabbages and stuff in. So I said, "Oh, can I give you a hand here?" And so we're packing up all these big bags of like feed sacks of food. And I said, well, is this going to the market? Are you going to be selling this? She said, oh, no. She said, this is going, and she tells me, well, this lady, she's not very well, and her daughter's in Nairobi, and the next sack is going here and there. And so all this food is being given away. Now, they're quite well off, and they have a fairly large farm by any standard. But the whole idea of, we need to share this stuff. So just in general, there's a lot of churches, and many of them are like this kind of storefront shed kind of combo. And they tend to have very interesting names. I'm not sure if you can read that one. Which one is this one? Yeah, faith manifestation. So interesting, like you think, I think they're just sort of one-offs. And then I think I have one more picture here, Jesus Nisi Church. And these are often just kind of, in storefronts, and sometimes there was one right near where I lived, and you could hear them singing, well into the afternoon. This is the church that I attended, which is called the PCA, which is Presbyterian Church of East Africa. The reason I went to this church is that they had an English service. But you can see this is a much bigger church, and it has a steel roof, which is very interesting when it rained. And on that particular day, the power also went out. So they said, could everyone please come to the front? But it's a big, big church inside. Like, I don't know how many it would hold, but I'm thinking 300 or so. So this PCA, it's one of 5 sites that share one pastor. And the services are led by like a district elder. So the elder is doing a lot. Like when the district is in charge of the service, that means that they do everything. They collect the money, they do the greeting, they do the whatever needs to be done. They'll provide the scripture readers and tea. We don't have coffee at church, but we have tea, so they do all of that. And then also they will do a presentation, which I'll show you later, which they come up and sing. And so that elder takes care of the service. Sometimes they would speak themselves. Sometimes they would just arrange for a speaker. The entire time I was there, I never saw this pastor. And when they had communion, they would sometimes have it on Friday nights. So I think it's one of the few churches in the area that has an English language service. And most people attend church at 10:30 in the local language. And the Sunday school is also at 10:30. This is just a picture I took of the church. So at the church, they have a poster here. They're trying to build a rental project. And you see that they're very involved in hospitals, in schools. They also have a bus. And so they're a very active church. As I said, they work with the other 5 in their area, in the Mahito area. It's called Mahito. So this is a group of people, and their district was in charge, and so here they're at the front singing a song, looking at their cell phones as they are singing. And I don't know if they practice this, but they're quite good. But they had different themes. So there was a youth Sunday. There was also one. They had a children's Sunday. And they had a health Sunday. This one, I think, is a video, is it, Wendy? And then you can hear them sing. So that just gives you a sense of their language. And, they're quite little. And you can see that one girl, she was like, oh, Mom, I don't want to go. But anyway, there's one everywhere, right? But she ends up at the front singing. And and those children, I'm not sure if you noticed the little girl in the orange toque, but she read the scriptures on Youth Sunday. Now, obviously, the children didn't preach the service, but they collected the money. And they did everything on that service. And this little girl, when she read the scriptures, and she did a good job, but she came up like about this high, like you could just see the little orange toque as she was reading scriptures. Yeah, she's there in the center there, and and did an excellent job. Like these kids are getting involved at quite a young age. So then I thought I would talk to you about a service I attended, and this was a coffee farmer who was the elder, and he spoke. And I have to say I was very impressed with these people when they speak at church. Like, they use very few notes. They're just quoting scriptures like you wouldn't believe. They really know their stuff, and yet they're people who are working every day at other things. Like, there's this one woman, she ran the cash office at the dairy, and she's an elder. And I didn't hear her speak, but there were other ones too. There was one woman who worked for the health authority, and she spoke as well. And this particular man, he talked about the story that we've read today. His idea was, that this woman, she has this embarrassing problem. Like, her kids are going to be taken away from her. And in those days, that was quite acceptable, that the spouse and children are responsible for the debts. And as we talked about in our Word Alive, this wasn't so long ago. This was also the case, because apparently Charles Dickens went to a workhouse because his father owed money. So this is, quite a bad problem. And Elisha says to her, go and ask your neighbors for help. And also she says, don't just ask for a few. Don't just ask for a few jugs. And but the lesson is that, even when we have a problem, an embarrassing problem, that we should talk to our neighbors. And he talked about how some of these problems might be mental health issues or family struggles with addiction. And so the widow and her neighbors, like, they get these empty jars, and he says, well, we talked again at our Word Alive, like, do these jars have value? Are these things that are just going out for recycling anyway in our world, or do these things have value? And they probably do have value. These empty jars do have value to these people, but they are still empty. And we can look at our own lives and see, we've put so much energy and love into things like our children or our businesses, and we can feel disappointed because it looks like just an empty jar to us. But God sees the potential of that. And then as I was listening to that sermon, I thought, I thought about us, and I thought about Westminster, and I think, we've put so much into our church. Or we feel we have, right? We've put so much of our time and our money and our effort. And we see the changes that have happened, and how it's not as full as it used to be, and we don't have the children that we used to have. And we're thinking, is it worth it? Was it worth it? And I think we need to think and say, well, what is the potential? Like, what is God saying to us? Like, when Elisha said to the widow, what do you have? And then she says, all I have is this little bit of oil. And he says, well, use that. And I think, to me, that was the message that I took out of that service in Kenya. Like, what do you have? Like, don't just think of what you don't have, Look at what you do have, and like, what is the potential that we have? And I just wanted to share that message with you, because it isn't just a travel log today, it is a church service, and I hope that this will speak to you as well. And I also wanted to talk to you about, I had mentioned earlier how I felt these people were very charitable. And so near the end of my stay, December 12th is a holiday in Kenya. It's their national day, and maybe it was a day they became a country, I believe. They did a lot of complaining about their government, and I believe that they think their government is corrupt, and it probably is. But they did a lot of complaining about that. You hear a lot of praying in church for their government, and yet on this day of this holiday, they decided they were going to do a walk. And one of the sponsors was the dairy, and also the chairman, which is the place where I lived. He was quite involved in this charity walk. And so they said to me, oh, you like to walk. Do you want to go on this charity walk? So, I've done the coldest night in the year, 5 kilometers. But anyway, this thing's 20 kilometers. So anyway, in for an inch, in for a mile, right? So anyway, I was recruited, and I went on this, and I was impressed with these people that they wanted to do something for the needy. It was near Christmas, and I think I have a few more slides of this. So here I am. This is with the people. So the tiny lady is Annie. She is the landlady, and then there's the chairman, and then the tallest fellow is one of their sons. And we're getting ready for the walk. And I think this could be a video of the walk. Yeah, here I am. So you'll be able to pick me out when you see me. The one with the white skin, yeah. Here I come, and I'm walking with Annie. We're almost done. You can see we're just about finished with ourselves too. But and then the money that they raised, that went to the Caratina Children's Home. And I don't know why these children are orphans, but I do know that AIDS is still very much the big problem in Kenya, and they are, it's the cause of death for 40% of the women in Kenya is AIDS. And so they were raising money for these children for their Christmas. They were also getting food, so the soccer team went out, or they call it the football, of course, and the football team that Royal Dairies sponsors, they went into the market, they got food, and this food also went to a home for women and children who are victims of gender violence. So I thought, where are we for our time? Oh, it's 11:30, we have no time. So, okay. So I think that's where we will end it, Wendy. Now, if people want to stay and have questions, I'm okay. But if, on the other hand, if it is 11:30, so. Yeah. It tastes a lot richer and creamier than what we have. I don't normally drink milk of that high of fat content, but it tastes good. It's clean. It's very clean tasting. I believe it's very safe when it's processed at the dairy. I think Dawn's saying, I'm not going to have that stuff they made on the farm. I'm thinking, yeah, I agree. So, all right. So now is the time for prayers. Do we have any prayers of, yes, just a minute. We usually get help with this, don't we, Tom?
My neighbor asked that we pray for a friend's granddaughter. Her name is Penelope, and she's 4. And she's in London Children's Hospital, just recently diagnosed with cancer.
Oh Lord, we come to you at this time, and we pray for our families and for our country, and we pray for stability in a time of uncertainty. We pray for continued peace in Gaza. We have concern for the West Bank and the ongoing wars in Ukraine. We ask that you will be there. We pray for Penelope and her family and for the diagnosis that they've received. We ask that you will be with the doctors and those who can help her, and we ask that she can be healed. We have our joys. We thank you for being with us at this time. We thank you for the blessings that you have given to us as a congregation and as individuals. At this time, silence is a friendly space within our thinking, making shades to show the sun, raising courage when we're shrinking, finding scope for faith begun. At this time, we will pray silently for our own concerns, things that we do not want to mention aloud. There's a place for deepest dreaming. There's a time for heart to care. In the Spirit's happy singing, there is always room to spare. And Lord, we want to thank you for the offering and dedicate it to you. We thank you for all those who have given of their time and of their talents and of their money. And we ask that you will bless it towards the work of your church. And we will now conclude by singing the Lord's Prayer. So these are the announcements of things that are happening in the coming week. There is no Word Alive. Mark is on holidays for the next 2 weeks, and Word Alive will be canceled. Gerard is available for any pastoral cares needs. There is going to be Chosen. The Chosen is a Netflix series, and there's going to be watch parties, and we'll have a discussion afterwards. The first one is going to be on February the 10th, which is a Monday, and it's going to be at the home of Susan and Stephen, Susan Cole and Stephen Graham, and it's going to be at 446 Hunt Road. You will be needing to watch a few episodes on your own, and we're going to watch the first one together and have a discussion. If you want to be involved, just let the office know. I don't know, 7 o'clock? 7 o'clock. So February 10, March 3, March 24, and March 31 at 7. Next Sunday, February 2nd at 10:30 is going to be lay leadership, and we're going to try something out, which is that the United Church has kind of pre-recorded services, and we're going to try that out and see how that would work for our church. And what was the next one? The camp registration had opened or something like this. Okay. And then I believe there's one about the coldest night of the year. Is there, Wendy? Okay, I'll just talk to that one. Okay, the coldest night of the year is a charity that is helping to raise money for homeless people or people who unsheltered. We had a team last year, and it was called Freezing for a Reason, and we want to have a team again this year. So if you would like to sign up to walk or to make a donation to someone who is, you can get in touch with the office. So far we have Reverend Mark and Kathy Cannon, and we're looking for more people to join the team. I heard something on the radio this week about, how we're getting this $200 in the mail, and some people need this because it's to help with, the rising cost of living. Others of us don't really need the money. This might be a good charity to put some of it to use. Also, if you have to write something for the impact report, those entries need to be into Sherry by Wednesday of this week. And now we will have our closing hymn, which is "This is God's Wonderful World." I think so. Wherever you go, God will be there. Help us notice together. Well, thanks for coming.
I'd just like to thank you, Marjorie,
Okay.
For being someone who makes a difference in the world, for leading us in worship and sharing that experience.
Yeah, thank you all for coming, and thank you for putting up with the first time in my life that I've led a worship service. So.